done Mille Feuilles. These make a fantastic summertime dessert, and this is a really easy recipe. I think you'll enjoy it. So let's get started. We're going to start by making our pastry cream. We're going to need 4 cups of cold milk. So I'm going to put that in. I've already put in the 2. I'm adding the other 2. We're going to immediately whisk up our eggs just a little bit and pour them into that. That's the whole point. You don't want the egg to cook of adding it to the cold milk. You want to make sure before the milk starts to heat up or cook that your egg is thoroughly beaten into the milk mixture. Like I said, this is a breeze to make. We cook up the pastry cream right in the pot all in one shot. Once our eggs are thoroughly beaten into our milk mixture, we want to add our sugar. We're going to need 1 1/4 cups of sugar. Mix that in as well. We're going to need flour, so we're going to add 8 heaping teaspoons of flour. Those are heaping, as you saw. Again, you want to whisk. You want to get all your ingredients in there while your milk is still cold. This cooks up very quickly too, which is nice. We want to make this first because when we make our puff pastry for this, we'll be giving it enough time to cool it prior to assembling our Napoleon. That's mixed up well. We've also added in with the sugar, I had added a teaspoon of salt. So that's salt in there as well, the flour. We want to add 4 tablespoons of butter. We also want to add a teaspoon of vanilla. And what I like to add after it's done, and I'm going to wait till this is finished cooking to add that, is a little bit of almond liqueur. A little bit of amaretto is what I'm using. Some almond liqueur. If you're cooking for children, you can omit that step. You don't want to put, because it's not going to cook off. We're going to be adding it after the cream is cooked. It lends a really nice flavor to the pastry cream. It's really a fantastic treat, but if you're going to be serving this to children, you really don't want to add it because the alcohol won't be cooking off. You can skip it completely, or you can add almond extract. That's another option if you're serving for children. Just use almond extract. I like the liqueur because, especially if serving to adults, it's not a problem. And it just adds an extra little something to it. So this is starting to heat up. You want to keep stirring as this cooks. It does cook up rather quickly, so you don't want to leave it alone. You don't want to leave it unattended. The butter's thoroughly melted now. Once you feel it start to have the temperature a little high now, medium high, but once you feel it start to thicken up so you don't scald it, you can lower the temperature just a tad bit so that it cooks thoroughly, so it cooks all the way through. When making, it's always better to make your pastry creams with flour. I like to avoid using corn products, but when you do, they do take a little bit longer to cook, so you don't want to get a pasty feeling to your pastry cream. You want it to be thoroughly cooked and creamy, so you lower the temperature and let it cook a tad bit longer than you would a cornstarch-based pastry cream. But the end result is much better than a cornstarch-based one, and it's far healthier for you, I believe. The few minutes extra that it takes to cook is actually well worth it. Like I said, just give it plenty of time to cook through. Don't rush it. Really doesn't take longer than 10 minutes, I'd say. This is my summer version of Napoleons. I have a winter version where I do the marble top effect with the icing. For the summertime, I find I like this version better. I put the almond liqueur in the filling, and I also top it with almonds and powdered sugar. It comes out really nicely. I think ideal for the summertime when you do want things just a little bit lighter, even your pastries. I don't know if you can see that, but it's thickening up nicely now. It should be ready in just a few moments. You want a nice thick pastry cream for your Napoleons so that they hold up well when it's sliced and served. So you do want to make sure you cook this all the way through. You can see it bubbling away. It's thickened up nicely. And you can see it bubbling away. And you want to let it do that. At this point, you can let it do that. Like I said, you don't want to wind up tasty tasting pastry cream. The more you cook it, the creamier and richer it'll get. So let it cook down a little bit. Like I said, all in all, this took less than 10 minutes. Obviously, that'll vary depending on the temperature of your stove top. It might take anywhere between 10 and 15 minutes. Very quick, very easy, very rich and delicious pastry cream. And so the only concern with this is just letting it cook thoroughly. I like it much better than a cornstarch-based pastry cream. And that's it. That looks about done. Perfect. Once we remove it from the flame, what we want to do is add our almond liqueur. I'm going to stir that in. It smells absolutely fantastic. Let me just make sure that's thoroughly incorporated. It smells really fantastic. I can't begin to tell you how fantastic this smells. That's done. We're going to cover this. You can cover it with wax paper. I prefer to steer clear of using plastic wraps, but if you do use plastic wrap, you can cover it with plastic wrap. Let it cool for a few minutes. Just a second. You want to cover it to prevent it from developing the skin. I've given my pastry cream a few moments to cool. And what I've done here is I've covered it with wax paper. As you can see, just make sure it just reaches all the way over to the edges of the pot and securely meets the edges of the pastry there and firmly meets the top. And it works just as well as any plastic wrap or anything else. And onto the puff pastry. Our puff pastry couldn't be simpler. This is a very easy way of making puff pastry. I think you'll enjoy it. We're going to need 2 cups of flour, a teaspoon of salt, and a cup of butter. We're going to work the butter into the flour and the salt. You just want to get a coarse, like a cornmeal texture. Work that in there quickly. Once you have your butter thoroughly cut into your flour, what you want to do, as you can see, you have a nice coarse cornmeal-like texture there. What you want to do is we're going to need about half a cup of ice water. What I do is I take half a cup of water and I have it sitting in ice cubes. 2 or 3 ice cubes will do. And we just slowly start incorporating that into our dough. Try not to get your ice cube in there. Just add it a little bit at a time. Sometimes you'll need a little bit less, sometimes a little bit more. It all depends on the flour and the butter. There are a lot of variables. And that's just right. As you can see, it's starting to pull away. It's pulled away from the sides of the bowl. And as much as I stirred, it all kind of comes together there. So what we can do at this point is actually knead it. We don't want to over knead it. We don't want to overwork this. We don't want the butter to melt. So I'm going to dust it with just a little bit of flour, very lightly. Knead it quickly, as if you were kneading bread, bringing in from the sides into the center. Dust a little bit more. Like I said, this is a very quick, very easy puff pastry to make. Just a tad bit more flour. And that's perfect. What I'm going to do now, because I'd like to make this quickly, I don't want this to take forever. Usually a puff pastry takes 4 turns and a long time, but I'm going to do a shorter version, and it comes out just as good, just as nicely, and you can use this for other pastries that you want to make that call for a puff pastry dough. So what I'm going to do is take my dough, place it on my surface. Once I have that on my surface, I'm going to make a quick beurrage. The beurrage is just a little over half of a stick of butter and a teaspoon of flour, maybe a little more than a teaspoon of flour. Mix together. The butter needs to be softened to room temperature. Actually, very softened, so your flour will mix in very easily. It's not a lot, it's not a huge amount, but it'll do just fine for what we want. I'm going to take some of our flour, spread it over our pastry dough here. Flip it over so we have both sides floured. And we're going to roll this out. Like I said, this is a very quick, very pleasant way of making your puff pastry. As you can see, it rolls out easily, not difficult to do. Make sure it's nice and level. And once I have that rolled out approximately to where I want it, let's take my beurrage and spread it into a thin layer. Get a nice even coating everywhere. But it doesn't need to be a thick layer. All the way to the edges. And once that's done, what we want to do is take our pastry and just roll it up. Once it's rolled, like that, into a nice lug, seam side up, we're going to place it. I have a baking sheet here that I plan on baking it in. Seam side up, place it on our baking sheet, and pop it in the fridge for 20 minutes. We want to let that thoroughly chill. We're not going to do a 4-stage, we're going to do a 2-stage, 20 minutes each, so this won't be a lengthy process at all. Making this Napoleon is nice and fast, making this puff pastry is nice and fast. So like I said, we're just going to place that in the fridge for 20 minutes to chill. And roll it out into a rectangle. So we're going to take it and fold it into 30. Place it in our tray, our baking sheet, fold side up again, and let that. We're at the final stage of our pastry, and what we want to do at this point is just roll it out. And the flour, if you find your dough starts getting the shape in, just bring it back into shape with your ruler, press down, and by the time you get to the size you want, you should have a fairly even size. do want to do is, because a lot of cold and condensation can build up, is I want to put my wax paper lengthwise, since that's the direction I want to roll. I'm happy with the lid. I'm going to press every so often, make sure you don't have any air in there. I'm going to press down. I have my oven preheating to 420. Your puff pastry requires an oven heated to over 400, depending on your oven, between 400 and 425. So I have mine set at 420. I have it preheating, so as soon as these are rolled out to the size I want, I'll be able to pop them in and cook them. Our pastry cream is in the fridge. That's also chilling. So by the time everything is done, it'll all be at the right temperature to assemble. As you can see, this rolls out very, very easily. What I want to do now, this is just about right. What I want to do now is, with my wax paper, fold it into thirds, approximately thirds. And I can even just cut it with the ruler and ensure that it comes out straight. I'm going to open this up again and cut right along the fold there. I'm going to take my first layer, place it in my baking sheet. Once it's in my baking sheet, I just want to run my ruler along the edges and press down and make sure it's perfectly straight. I mean, it will shrink a little bit on cooking. Make sure that everything's as even as I can possibly get it. At that point, you want to pierce with a fork for me to remove it too. Like I said, this will probably shrink a little bit too. We're just going to pierce very well. You don't want this puffing up too much on you. Once that's pierced really well, we pop it in the oven. It doesn't take long to cook at all. I'm not going to use 3 pans for this. I'm going to bake them consecutively, one right after the other. I am, however, going to place these in the fridge while this cooks so the butter doesn't melt on me. To do that, I'm just going to fold over some of the wax paper, like so. I'm going to take this off of its wax paper, fold that over as well, and just place it over there. And place it in the fridge. Our first layer is out. We have our second layer in the pan and just about ready to go in. We repeat the same process, placing it in our pan, scooching the edge of the ruler along the sides, just mostly trying to make sure they come out even, make sure those edges, the straighter they are, the nicer they'll cook up too. Like I said, this will shrink, this will distort a little during cooking, but easy enough. Again, we pierce well. Place in the oven. They take about 10 minutes to bake, tops. Our second layer is out of the oven. You just bake until they're a nice golden brown on top. We just go pop it onto a wire wrap. We're going to take our last layer, and this one, since it's been on the rolling paper for a while, just so as not to lose its shape, I'm just going to roll off. Just rough enough so I can touch it. Pop into my pan. Once that's in, again pierce. Pop it in the oven, 5-10 minutes. I have some almonds here that I want to use on the top. I don't know if you've ever blanched almonds before. Very easy to do. These are raw almonds. I've poured some boiling water, just about boiling water, on them and let them sit until it's cool enough to touch. It really takes 5 or 10 minutes. And then you just squeeze and the casing comes right off. You can use them as they are. Just squeeze between your fingers and the almond pops right out. I give them a final rinse, and I'm just going to pop them in the oven to toast them up a little bit so they have a nice golden brown color. And your almonds are blanched. I like to have them just after they're toasted or prior. I'm going to give these a rinse and pop them on my baking sheet after my pastry is done. Our last layer is done. That's out of the oven as well. It's piping hot. What I'm going to do is transfer that to a lighter racket as well. The great thing about these is that they don't take a long time to cool down. They cool down very quickly. I'm going to pop my almonds on this and toast them up as well, and I'm just going to let these cool. And also, after they're thoroughly cool, I'm going to pop them in the fridge for a little while. This way they're nice and chilled when we're working with them. Our layers are cooled. They were placed in the fridge to chill thoroughly. They're nice and golden brown on both sides. Lovely color. They came out great. We're going to take our 2 best layers and choose those. We're going to take our worst layer. This happens to be mine. I'm going to take our worst layer, put it in here, and we're going to crumble it up. If I were doing a fondant or an icing topping, I would not be doing this. I would be using the sheet as is and placing it on the bottom. But I'm going to do the flaky top that's done with this. It's also easier to cut. And you want to break those down as small as you can. Like I said, sift through. Make sure you don't have any large pieces. You see you have a nice multicolored flaky topping. There we go. That's about done. And now I have my toasted almonds. You can omit this part. I happen to like it a lot. Almonds are really good for you. They're chock full of vitamin E. They've been found to combat cholesterol. I like to take some and crush them up a little bit. I do leave some of the larger ones too. They smell heavenly too. They're a nice addition to your Napoleon. Like I said, I crush some, I leave some on the larger side, and I throw them in there as well. At this point, I'm also going to take some powdered sugar and add that, about 4 tablespoons. I'm just going to sip that all together, just shake that all up. Make sure it's thoroughly mixed. Like I said, this will make for a really pretty topping. We're going to trim the edges off the rest of ours, so we're going to add that off of the other 2 layers, so we're going to add that to this as well. I'm going to save some powdered sugar to add after we do that and to add on top. Once our topping's ready, normally I would work on wax paper at this stage also. I just happened to run out today. I thought I had another roll and I didn't, so I'm going to have to resort to the aluminum foil. That's fine too. We're going to take our 2 good layers. Like I said, these came out really nicely. I'm going to place them one on top of the other, and with a very large serrated knife, very sharp, very large serrated knife, we're going to trim the edges. those edges and throw those into our crumb mixture too. Just crumble them up. We can do that when we're done. I'm going to turn, do the other side. Make sure these don't move on you. Hold firmly in the center. Try not to press down and break the pastry. Now we're going to do the sides. I'm going to check my pastry, shake it off well. These are perfectly cut. I have my layers. I'm going to take my layers, take the bottom one, like so, place it in the center of my workspace. I'm going to take my pastry cream, remove the wax paper. A very nice, thick consistency. I don't know if you can see that. Perfect for what we need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a good stir. It smells fantastic with the almond and the vanilla. This is really, really a fantastic pastry cream. And what I want to do, I want my layers to be even. So what I want to do is spread this out after a good stir into the pot. And you can see what I'm doing here. I have it spread out evenly in the pot. And what I'm going to do is just draw a line right through it, dead center there, so that as I spoon it out, I basically separate it into 2 equal parts. It makes it very easy without too much of a fuss to make sure that you get your layers even. I'm going to take it, and I'm going to spoon it onto my layers. You can make more cream if you like. You can double the amount. Some people prefer less. I like a fair amount of cream. I don't like when it's too thin of a layer in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently try to spread it out there without going too close to the edges. Use my spoons as I work with it, because after we put the other layer on top, this will spread out just a little bit more, and I don't want it to go too far. And what I want to do with this now is I like to set it in the fridge. You can even pop it in the freezer if you like for a few moments to set. Not long at all, just to let it set so that your other layer will sit nicely on top of that. Once that's set, it just takes a few moments. You can see the flakiness of the pastry there, and you can see how firm the cream is. I'm going to take our second layer, and I'm going to place that right on top, trying to make sure that we have everything lined up. Occasionally you lose sight of one of the sides, so you want to make sure you have everything lined up perfectly. Press down just a tad bit, just a touch. Now this second layer, what I like to do, it's not really necessary. You can skip it completely. I like to score it. It makes for easier cutting later on, and it's really easy to do. What I do is I I measure each side right at the center and make a little mark. Just to kind of use as a guide. Like I said, this will make much easier cutting later on. You don't want to cut all the way through, so that your Napoleon sets nicely, but you want to cut as far through as possible without cutting all the way through. Without jiggling it around too much. I also want to do sideways. So I want these in an oblong. I want them about 2 inches. So I'm just going to go along here and mark every 2 inches. Try to hold it steady. Try not to push down on it too much. Like I said, it does make for easier cutting. You lose a little bit of the flakes on top, that's fine. Be under the pastry cream. Now when you're ready to cut, that will, if you've lost a little of your pastry cream there, just clean it away with your spoon. What we do now, take the last of our pastry cream and spoon it on top. This one we want to try to bring out as far to the edges as possible. We're going to be finishing off with the crumb topping. So we want it to get as far and as close as we can to those edges. We're going to let this set in the fridge again, just about 5 minutes. What I've been doing is popping it in the freezer. Feel free to do the same. You really don't want to place a custard ever, which basically that's what our pastry cream is. It's a type of custard in the freezer because of the crystals, but a really short amount of time won't be a problem. 5 minutes is fine. And it's just enough time for this to set. Once our pastry has cooled and set, we're going to take it and we're going to place it back in the pan we baked in. I'm going to push down the foil so there's plenty of room. This is basically so that we can set it aside to chill some more, but also to add our topping. Make sure all edges are level before continuing. This is one of the final stages. I don't know if you can see. So we're going to take our topping, which came out really nicely. You see the little flakes there, the powdered sugar, the almonds, which, like I said, since they're roasted and we have the almond in the cream, have a really nice aroma. That'd be a nice touch. I'm going to take that, I'm going to put some on there. And that's why we basically placed it in the tray too, in case they fall off. You want to try to get this all on there. The almonds also have a little bit of oil, which help. It's a very flaky topping, but between that and the moisture from the cream beneath and the oil and the almonds, it does help keep your crumb together nicely. And then we're just going to press down and try to get it all the way out to the edges. You can let them spill over to the pan. Try to press down so that they do have a firm texture. We're going to take a little bit of powdered sugar. I'm going to press that up there. Try to get all the way out there to the edges. You have your pan as a safety net, this way you're not making a mess anywhere. There's so much foil on the pan that cleanup will be a breeze. And a nice good layer there. Once that's done, as you can see, that really came out fantastic. Once we serve it, you'll be able to get a better visual. It's a very nice topping, very easy to cut. It tastes absolutely fantastic, very easy to make. I'm going to pop this in the fridge and chill for at least an hour before cutting and serving. Our Napoleons are thoroughly chilled and ready to be cut. A serrated knife works best for these. And you might want to wipe your knife or rinse your knife. You're also going to cut it. If you let them sit, they cut very easily. Sprinkle with a dash of cocoa powder. Our Napoleons are cut. They're ready to serve. They came out really nicely. I hope you try this recipe. It's really a fantastic Napoleon. The pastry cream is very rich, very fragrant. It'll be a really, really fresh tasting Napoleon. You'll avoid all the additives that you do with the product that you would buy outside the home. Nothing compares to something you make at home. Like I said, these are very easy to cut, very easy to serve. They transfer easily. Actually yummy. Like I said, a very rich, very moist pastry. Pop in our plate. We can take little chocolate. You can either take melted chocolate or a chocolate drizzle, an angle, and just decorate the plate a little bit up, like that. It's absolutely fantastic, great summertime dessert. I hope you try it. I hope you enjoy it. Till next time.